The night the radar screens flickered, no one at the edge of the Red Sea realized history was about to pivot. Airspace that had been tense for weeks suddenly felt heavier, quieter, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. Somewhere far above the clouds, engines roared without sound, metal cutting through darkness at speeds that made reaction almost impossible. This was not a warning shot. This was not diplomacy. This was the opening move of a strike meant to change the balance in one decisive moment. For months, the region had been simmering. Shipping lanes were threatened, drones and missiles were launched with growing confidence, and every new incident pushed rival forces closer to a direct confrontation. The Houthis, emboldened by their expanding reach, had turned a once quiet airport into a strategic hub. What looked like a civilian airfield on satellite images had become something else entirely beneath the surface. Hardened shelters, mobile launch systems, radar units, and underground storage areas carefully disguised to blend into everyday airport operations. Flights still landed, lights still glowed, but the purpose had changed. Across the sea, planners studied those images frame by frame. Every runway marking, every hangar shadow, every vehicle pattern told a story. Intelligence analysts pieced together timelines, identifying when cargo arrived, when personnel rotated, and when air defenses powered up. This was not guesswork. It was preparation. The conclusion was clear and unsettling. The airport was no longer just an airport. It was a forward operating base, a launchpad that threatened regional stability far beyond its fences. The decision, once made, moved quickly. There would be no public buildup, no press briefings, no leaks. Surprise was the weapon. The aircraft chosen were not new, but they were proven. The F-15, a platform forged in the Cold War and refined through decades of conflict, was selected for a reason. Speed, payload, and reliability mattered more than novelty. These jets had been upgraded, their avionics sharpened, their sensors tuned for modern warfare. They were not symbols. They were tools. As darkness fell, ground crews worked with practiced precision. Fuel lines connected and disconnected in silence. Weapons were mounted and double-checked. Pilots walked their aircraft, hands brushing metal skins, memorizing every detail as if this might be the last time. In the cockpit, systems came alive one by one, screens glowing softly in the dark. Checklists were followed, not rushed, not delayed. This was routine, and that was what made it dangerous. Takeoff was clean and fast. Wheels left the runway and vanished into the night. Within minutes, the jets were climbing, forming up, then spreading out as they crossed into contested airspace. Radios stayed quiet. Emissions were minimized. The sky ahead was watched not just with eyes, but with sensors that could see heat, movement, and electromagnetic whispers miles away. On the ground below, the airport looked calm. Runway lights traced familiar lines. Control towers stood tall and unaware. Vehicles moved slowly, predictably. There was no evacuation, no alarm. The illusion of normalcy held right up until the final seconds. The first indication came as a faint anomaly on local radar. A blip that shouldn't have been there. Then another. Air defense operators leaned closer to their screens, fingers hovering over controls. But by the time confirmation was sought, it was already too late. The F-15s were inside the envelope, weapons armed, targets locked. The strike began with precision rather than spectacle. Guided munitions dropped from altitude, invisible until impact. The first explosions tore through hardened shelters near the runway, ripping open concrete as if it were paper. Shockwaves rolled outward, shattering windows, flipping vehicles, and sending debris skyward in towering plumes. Within seconds, secondary blasts followed as stored munitions ignited, confirming what intelligence had long suspected. Runways were next. Specialized weapons cratered the tarmac at carefully calculated intervals, ensuring no aircraft could take off or land. Each impact was surgical, placed to maximize damage and minimize wasted effort. The airport's lifeline was severed in under a minute. Air defenses attempted to respond. Missiles launched blindly into the sky, their guidance confused by countermeasures and electronic warfare. Flares burned bright, decoys pulled threats away, and the jets pressed on, untouched. The sound arrived after the destruction, a deep, rolling thunder that echoed across the surrounding countryside. In the control tower, chaos replaced routine. Screens went dark. Communications failed. Power flickered, then died. Personnel scrambled for cover as another wave of strikes hit fuel storage areas. Fire erupted, massive and uncontrollable, painting the night orange and black. Smoke rose in thick columns, visible for miles. The entire operation lasted minutes, but its effects were immediate and irreversible. What had once been a functioning airport was now a shattered landscape of craters, twisted metal, and burning wreckage. The carefully hidden infrastructure was exposed and destroyed. Launch systems lay in pieces. Radar arrays were gone. Command centers collapsed into themselves. As the jets turned away, climbing back into the darkness, there was no pursuit. No effective response. The message had been delivered with unmistakable clarity. By morning, satellite images told the story the world had not yet heard. The runway was scarred beyond quick repair. Hangars were flattened. Fires still burned, sending smoke into the pale sky. Traffic in the area slowed to a crawl as civilians tried to understand what had happened during the night. Statements began to emerge, cautious and measured. Officials spoke of defensive actions, of preventing imminent threats, of protecting international shipping and regional security. Words were chosen carefully, but the implications were obvious. A line had been crossed, and the consequences would ripple outward. For the Houthis, the loss was more than physical. The airport had been a symbol of reach and resilience, a way to project power beyond their immediate territory. Its destruction sent a signal not just to them, but to allies and adversaries alike. Capabilities could be built, hidden, and defended, but they could also be found and erased. In military circles, the strike was analyzed in detail. The choice of aircraft, the timing, the weapon selection, and the execution all pointed to meticulous planning. It was a reminder that modern airpower was not about carpet bombing or overwhelming force, but about precision, intelligence, and speed. A few jets, properly employed, could reshape an entire operational landscape. Civilians in the surrounding areas faced a different reality. Flights were cancelled indefinitely. Infrastructure repairs would take months, if not longer. The economic impact spread quickly, affecting supply chains and daily life. War, even when targeted, never stays confined to military objectives alone. International reactions were swift and divided. Some nations emphasized the right to self-defense and the need to deter escalating threats. Others warned of retaliation and the risk of wider conflict. Diplomatic channels buzzed with urgent conversations, each side trying to prevent the next move from becoming even more destructive. Yet beneath the politics and statements, one fact remained undeniable. In a single night, the balance had shifted. An airport that had quietly transformed into a strategic weapon was now unusable. The skies over that region were suddenly quieter, but the silence felt fragile. For the pilots, the mission ended the same way it always did. Landing, shutdown, debrief. They spoke in technical terms, discussing timings, systems, and performance. Emotion stayed buried beneath professionalism. Tomorrow would bring new orders, new missions, new risks. The sky never stayed calm for long. For those who watched from afar, replaying grainy footage and satellite images, the strike became something else, a story of power, precision, and consequence. It was framed as a warning, a demonstration, a turning point. Whether it would deter future attacks or provoke new ones remained uncertain. What was certain was this: the era of hidden runways and disguised bases had grown far more dangerous. In a world where eyes in the sky never blink, the difference between an airport and a battlefield could vanish overnight. And when it did, the response would not come with sirens or speeches, but with engines in the dark, moving faster than sound, leaving behind a landscape forever changed.